I've been a barber for over 2 decades. Behind this old chair and sharp razor, I've heard more stories than most folks do in a lifetime. I've seen CEOs crumble in silence, fathers break under grief, and lonely men light up talking about those they once loved. But every so often a story finds me. A raw, quietly powerful tale that lingers long after the haircut's done. And with their permission tonight, I'm not just shaving, I'm sharing the story of a man who had everything and a little girl who lost it all. This isn't just about money, trauma, or healing. It's about a strange kind of magic. The magic in silent sketches, forgotten songs, and the warmth of someone who doesn't try to fix you, but chooses to sit with you through the storm. So pull up a chair, dim the lights, and open your heart. Because what you're about to hear isn't a fairy tale, and it sure as hell isn't fiction. It's about a girl named Sophie, a grieving father named Liam, and a stranger who walked into their lives with a box of crayons and somehow rewrote everything they thought they knew about love. The thick night in an Asheville mountaintop mansion was torn by a scream. It wasn't the cry of fear from a monster under the bed. It was the raw scream of a horrific memory, an echo of pain a 6-year-old body couldn't possibly hold. In a luxurious but cold room, Sophie thrashed in a nightmare, eyes squeezed shut, tears streaming. Liam, her father, a brilliant architect who could bend steel and glass to his will, stood frozen in the doorway, utterly helpless. His vast wealth and power meant nothing against his daughter's anguish. Every attempt he made only fueled her panicked sobs. Then, a figure slipped quietly into the room. Chloe, the nanny he'd only met hours before. She didn't speak. Her eyes held no pity, but a profound, almost eerie understanding. She knelt beside Sophie, and in the room's stillness she began to hum, a wordless, ancient, simple melody, yet heavy with indescribable weight. As she hummed, her hand traced invisible shapes on the trembling girl's back. Liam was stunned. Where had he heard that tune before? Long ago, from someone he thought he'd never hear again. Like a miracle, Sophie's cries softened. The nightmare dissolved, replaced by steady breaths. Liam stared at Chloe, this stranger who just entered his home, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt something stronger than pain, utter astonishment. He looked at her as if she were a ghost from his happiest memory. You're probably thinking this is a horror flick scene or a fairy tale? Not at all. This is a true story of broken hearts and the healing power from the places we least expect. We've all faced loss, but what happens when that pain steals a child's voice? What happens when a man with everything can't buy back his daughter's smile? He tried the best doctors, the priciest therapies. Nothing worked. Until tonight. In today's video, we'll follow Chloe, an art therapist hiding her own wounds, who stumbles into a shattered family. She came for a temp job, unaware that fate tied her to them by an invisible thread from years past. We'll see how a single brushstroke can spark a conversation. We'll uncover the secret behind a melody that soothes the darkest nightmares. And most importantly, we'll find the answer to this. Is love and empathy truly the most powerful magic capable of reviving dead souls? Buckle up, keep your heart wide open, because the journey to reclaim a voice, a laugh, and a home starts now. To grasp that miraculous yet tense moment, we must rewind a few hours to when an old taxi rattled up a gravel road toward one of Western North Carolina's most striking architectural feats. Liam's house wasn't a home. It was a fortress of glass and concrete, built to keep the outside world at bay. Autumn fog clung to its sharp angles, making it look both majestic and achingly solitary. As Chloe stepped out of the cab, she instinctively pulled her cream-colored sweater tighter, a reflex against not just the mountain chill, but the cold radiating from this place. The massive oak door swung open. Liam stood there, tall and silent. He didn't smile. His eyes scanned Chloe, not with curiosity, but with the scrutiny of a man used to controlling everything. Thanks for coming. His voice was low, even, betraying no emotion. Your sister called. She's got a bad flu. Chloe nodded, offering a small smile that went unreturned. I'm sorry to hear that. She asked me to help out for a few days. I'm Chloe. The interior was colder than the outside. Soaring walls, pricey minimalist furniture, and a heavy silence blanketed everything. No family photos, no scattered toys, just a hauntingly perfect order. Liam led her to a vast room overlooking the valley. In its center, a girl with jet black hair sat on the floor, silently arranging wooden blocks in an endless straight line. She didn't look up. "This is Sophie," Liam said, his voice softening slightly. "There's something you need to know." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sophie doesn't speak. She hasn't said a word in nearly 2 years. Don't try to make her talk. Just keep her safe and fed. That's all." The command, spoken with a weary near desperation, hung in the air. It wasn't just a rule. It was a wall Liam had built around his little girl. Chloe glanced at Sophie, then at Liam, and in the eyes of this seemingly steely man, she saw a profound pain no architectural masterpiece could hide. After showing Chloe the basics, Liam retreated to his office. But he didn't work. Chloe's presence, her gentle eyes, her warm smile, had stirred something in him, a vague familiarity he couldn't name. He opened his laptop, scrolling through old files almost unconsciously. Then he stopped. A folder labeled Caroline's Memories, his late wife's name. Inside was a short video titled WNC Children's Art Gala 2 years ago. He clicked play. The screen lit up with Caroline's radiant smile, her lively voice capturing the gala's buzz. Liam's heart clenched. Then her camera panned to a corner where kids were engrossed in drawing. Guiding them was a young woman with her hair tied high, wearing a paint-splattered apron. She patiently showed a boy how to mix sky blue. Caroline's voice whispered from the past, "Look at that girl, honey. She's got the hands of a healer." Liam paused the video. He zoomed in on the woman's face. It was Chloe. Younger, carefree, but unmistakable. He bowed his head, a heavy sigh escaping. Fate was cruel. The woman his wife had admired from afar was now in his home, brought here by a twist of chance. He remembered. Meanwhile, in the playroom, Chloe didn't rush to engage Sophie. She knew the girl's silence was a protective shell. Any forceful breach would only thicken it. She sat on the floor, a safe distance away, pulling out a sketch pad and a box of crayons. She said nothing. She began to draw. Chloe sketched a forest. A gray, desolate forest, skeletal trees stretching under endless rain. She poured the sadness and loneliness she sensed in this house into every stroke. Sophie, from the corner of her eye, watched. She stopped arranging her blocks. Curiosity trumped her defenses. After minutes of silence, Sophie inched closer. She stared at the bleak drawing. Then, without warning, she grabbed a yellow crayon. Her small hand moved across the paper, and above the rainy forest, a blazing golden sun appeared, its rays piercing the gray clouds. That was their first conversation, a wordless dialogue through color and shape. Chloe looked up at the girl, and for the first time, she saw a spark in Sophie's once empty eyes. A soft, genuine smile curved Chloe's lips. She didn't know that, through the office window, Liam had seen it all. And he knew this woman wasn't just a nanny. She was something else, something he hadn't dared hope for in years. The days that followed passed in an unfamiliar calm. The silence in Liam's house no longer felt heavy, suffocating. Instead, it was a necessary pause, fertile ground where new things began to sprout. Under Chloe's gentle guidance, the playroom corner transformed into a mini art studio. Paper, paints, clay, and colorful fabric scraps replaced dusty, expensive electronic toys. Sophie still didn't speak, but she no longer lived in her own world. She spoke volumes through her drawings. One day, she drew Liam not as a solitary black shadow, but as a tall figure holding an umbrella over a tiny flower. Chloe taped the picture to the fridge, and for the first time in months, Liam stood in the kitchen, not working, but staring. A fleeting, genuine smile crossed his lips, brief as a second. He started coming home earlier, spending time in the playroom, silent, watching the quiet magic unfold between them. Hope, a dangerous feeling he'd long buried, began to creep back. Then, that night, the past came to collect its dues. The familiar scream tore through the darkness, fiercer, more desperate. The nightmare returned, dragging shadows no one could see. Liam rushed to his daughter's room, his heart gripped by an invisible hand. All the progress, all the glimmers of hope from recent days seemed to vanish like smoke. He was again the helpless father, watching his child drown in pain he couldn't reach. But this time, Chloe was there. She entered the room, calm and resolute. She signaled Liam to step back, then knelt beside Sophie, and she began to hum. It wasn't a typical lullaby. Its melody was simple, repetitive, like an echo of tamed sorrow. Liam recognized it, the same tune from his wife's old video. As Chloe's fingers gently traced circles and lines on Sophie's back, a memory flashed in her own mind. This was her melody, a wordless song she'd crafted in her loneliest nights after her father's death, a secret remedy to soothe her own soul. Now she was sharing the most intimate, vulnerable part of herself with this girl. She was giving away her only medicine, and it worked. Sophie's sobs quieted, her rigid body softened, and she slipped into peaceful sleep under Chloe's hands and song. Liam stood at the door, breathless. The coincidence was overwhelming. It couldn't be chance. It felt like his late wife's invisible hand was orchestrating it all. That newfound peace didn't last long. The next morning, a luxury car pulled up. Jessica, Caroline's sister, stepped out. She was sharp, impeccably dressed, with piercing, wary eyes. She loved Sophie fiercely, but her love was possessive, distrustful of anyone entering their world. "I'm just checking on her," Jessica said, her voice sweet, but her eyes sweeping the room, lingering on the drawings taped to the walls and Chloe's presence. When she saw Sophie, not alone, but tugging Chloe's sleeve to show her a ladybug on a leaf, her face tightened. "Liam, can we talk privately?" Jessica pulled him aside. "Who is this woman? I don't think it's wise to let a stranger influence Sophie so much. She's fragile. She needs familiarity, not new experiments." Before Liam could respond, Chloe quietly led Sophie to the backyard, giving them space. This was a test. The Liam of days ago might have agreed with Jessica, firing Chloe for the sake of stability. But today's Liam was different. "Jessica," he said, his voice low and firm. "Her name's Chloe, and she's helping Sophie. I've never seen her so at peace. Trust me." Those simple words were a steel declaration. It was the first time he actively defended change, defended his newfound hope. Jessica was stunned, but fell silent. The confrontation with Jessica made Liam realize something. He couldn't live with unanswered questions forever. He needed to understand this invisible bond. That afternoon, he did something he'd avoided for 2 years. He opened the storage shed where Caroline's keepsakes lay. The scent of dust and dried lavender flooded his senses. Among the boxes, he found it, a vibrant abstract painting in blue and gold, a clash of sorrow and hope. His wife had bought it at that gala, saying it spoke to her. He flipped it over. A small, handwritten note read, "When words fail, let color speak." That evening, he brought the painting to the living room where Chloe was reading. Wordlessly, he handed it to her. Chloe studied it, then saw the note on the back. She gasped, her eyes wide with shock. "This painting," her voice trembled. How do you have it?" "I sold it at the charity gala 2 years ago to fund the art therapy program I dreamed of starting." The room fell silent. Every piece clicked into place. His wife, long ago, had brought home a piece of this woman's soul. And now that woman was here, using that same soul to mend his family. If this wasn't fate, what was? The silence following Chloe's revelation wasn't awkward. It was filled with a wordless understanding. The invisible ice wall between her and Liam had melted completely, not by a blaze of passion, but by the warm current of empathy and a strange twist of fate. In the days that followed, the Asheville mountaintop house truly became a home. The air was no longer cold. Sophie's soft giggles as she played with Chloe in the garden, the gentle clink of a coffee mug set on Liam's desk each morning, the whispered conversations between the adults after Sophie fell asleep. These small sounds wove a symphony of peace. Liam found himself smiling more, the lines around his eyes no longer marks of exhaustion but of joy. He watched Chloe braid Sophie's hair, patiently explaining the colors of autumn leaves, and he knew he wasn't just seeing his daughter heal, he was healing too. They'd become a family, in every sense, though no one dared name it. It was a fragile, precious bubble of happiness, floating in a harsh reality. And like all bubbles, it couldn't last forever. One sunny afternoon, as Chloe sat on the porch watching Sophie draw, an email pinged on her phone. Its subject line made her heart skip. Nightingale Art Therapy Project, official invitation. There it was, her lifelong dream, the chance to start and run her own nonprofit art therapy program for struggling kids in Oregon, a project she'd nurtured to honor her late father. It wasn't just a job, it was a mission, a legacy, a promise she'd made to herself and him. The email said the board was fully convinced by her proposal and needed her in 2 weeks to begin work. Chloe's heart tore in two. She looked at Sophie, who glanced up with a smile, crayon in hand. She thought of Liam, their quiet, connected evenings. Here in this house, she'd found a love she never dared dream of. But in Oregon lay a future she tirelessly fought for. Half her heart belonged here, where she'd mended broken pieces. The other half belonged to her promise, to other kids needing healing. She had to choose, and either path would leave part of her soul behind. That night, she couldn't sleep. After hours of tossing, she made a wrenching decision. The next morning, when Liam and Sophie woke, Chloe was gone. She'd left in silence as she'd entered their lives. No goodbye. On the playroom's small table, she left a new box of crayons and a drawing. It showed the three of them on a hill, hand in hand, facing a rising sun. Sophie in the middle, Liam on one side, Chloe on the other. But one detail stood out. Liam and Sophie's figures were vivid, sharply colored, while Chloe's was fainter, almost translucent, like a passing spirit, a beautiful memory about to fade. Liam found the drawing first. He stood frozen, the paper trembling in his hands. He understood instantly. This was her farewell. A familiar emptiness flooded his chest, cold and cruel. She'd chosen her mission. She'd chosen to leave. He'd found and lost again, all in a heartbeat. He sank into a chair, drained of strength. Just then, Sophie walked in. She saw her father's face, then the drawing on the table, her wide eyes fixed on Chloe's faint outline. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. With an uncanny resolve, she picked up a yellow crayon. Her tiny hand moved. She didn't add anything new. She carefully, meticulously layered color over Chloe's figure, stroke after stroke, until it blazed as brightly as the others. When she finished, Sophie set the crayon down. She looked at her father, still lost in his pain. Then a sound broke the quiet room. Not a cough, not a sob, a word. A clear, trembling word, unused for so long. Daddy, Liam's world stopped. He snapped his head up, staring at his daughter. Sophie met his gaze, her eyes clear, pleading. She spoke again, clearer, a full sentence. Bring her home. Daddy, bring her home. Those final two words, her home, struck Liam's soul like a thunderbolt. For a moment, his world stopped spinning. The clamor of the past, the shadows of regret, the icy walls he'd built around his heart, all shattered into pieces. The fog in his mind cleared, leaving a single, crystal-clear purpose. He didn't hesitate for a second. He sprang from the chair, scooping Sophie into his arms. She wasn't surprised, just clung tightly to his neck, one hand gripping the fully colored drawing. Liam grabbed the keys from the table, ignoring his coat or wallet. He rushed out of the house, a tomb of silence minutes ago, now the starting point of the most vital journey of his life. The car sped through the thickening early season snow. The winding, slippery mountain roads couldn't stop a man guided by a sacred purpose. He drove on instinct, eyes locked on the road ahead, but his mind held only one image, Chloe's face as she looked back at him. Beside him, Sophie sat quietly, not the silence of fear, but of resolve. She knew what her father was doing. He was answering her heart's command. Asheville-Hendersonville Airport loomed ahead, a chaotic blur of lights and hurried crowds. Liam parked at the drop-off zone, ignoring honking protests. Carrying Sophie, he raced inside. The intercom's announcements, the clatter of suitcase wheels, the hum of chatter, all merged into a cacophony. His eyes frantically scanned the departure board. The flight to Portland, Oregon, boarding. His heart sank. They might be too late. He sprinted toward security, desperately searching for a familiar head of hair. Then, through the crowd, he saw her. Chloe stood alone in the boarding line, her back to him. She looked small, lonely, her shoulders slightly slumped. She didn't seem like someone chasing a dream, but someone leaving everything behind. Chloe! Liam's shout, louder and fiercer than any sound he'd ever made, echoed across the terminal. Heads turned. So did Chloe's. The moment she saw him, time froze. Her face flashed with disbelief, confusion, then a fragile spark of hope. Liam didn't need to say more. He held the drawing high, a vibrant image of three figures, an undeniable declaration. And then the day's second miracle happened. From her father's arms, Sophie looked straight at Chloe and called her name, clear and pure. Chloe. That was enough. The tears Chloe had held back for 24 hours broke free. She didn't care about the line, the flight, or the Oregon dream anymore. She turned, running back through the stunned crowd straight into Liam and Sophie's arms. The three clung to each other in the bustling airport, an island of warmth and reunion. Liam buried his face in Chloe's hair, breathing in her familiar scent. "Don't go," he whispered, voice hoarse with emotion. "Come home, with us." Chloe looked up, tears streaming, but her smile brighter than any sunrise. She glanced at Liam, then Sophie, and nodded. Yes, she said. I'm coming home. 6 months later, the Asheville mountaintop house was no longer cold. Sophie's laughter now echoed through its halls. The scent of oil paint from Chloe's newly built art therapy room mingled with the aroma of baking cookies from the kitchen. Liam had rediscovered his smile and his passion for work. He no longer built fortresses, he built homes. Life often leaves us with scars, silences we think will never be filled. But this story reminds us that sometimes those carrying their own wounds have the deepest power to heal others. Because they know the value of gentleness, they understand the weight of pain. True love isn't finding someone flawless. It's finding someone brave enough to step into your chaos, look at your soul's cracks, and say, I'm here. I'm not afraid. Cherish the quiet connections, the wordless acts of love. Because sometimes a brushstroke, a melody, or simply being there at the right moment is the home your heart has always sought. Cracks aren't weaknesses. They're where the light gets in.